everyone, this is Arif, and once again we are here with the CIA Part 2 Unit 9 Communicating Results and Monitoring Progress video lecture. And this is the last unit of CIA Part 2, so I'm very much excited. I took some time to record this video because I was very sick. First I got COVID, and after 2 weeks I got another viral infection, and after that infection the complication increases, and then I encountered another infection, and eventually I ended up in the hospital for 6 days, and it took me around 3 to 4 weeks to recover, and now I'm almost 95% okay. I'm still on medication, and thanks for all your prayers because I put it on post. So here I am with the Unit 9, and keep on praying for me that I recover fully, and secondly I keep on posting these kind of videos for other people to benefit from, and remember me and my family in your prayers. So without going into too much details, let's start with our last video of CIA Part 2 Unit 9. This is a brief introduction about my career and about my qualification. If you are interested, you can pause the video, you can review it, though it is not updated because my current role is not reflecting in this entire introduction. But if you are just interested, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, and that's all. This is a snapshot of the entire syllabus and what we have covered so as of now, and obviously we have covered the entire units from Unit 1 to Unit 8, and currently we are on Unit 9. There is a breakdown of the syllabus coverage, and since the MCQs are 100, so as per the syllabus coverage, I presume that relatively a similar number of MCQs comes from each section. So this is just a rough estimate for you to understand that if you are weak in any area, you have to know that how many MCQs are you foregoing or letting it go in the exam. Overall, I found Part 2 more logical, much easier than Part 1. The passing percentage, which also reflect in the passing percentage. The passing percentage of Part 2 is relatively higher than Part 1, but it is more practical oriented. So if you are not a practicing auditor, you have to spend more time in understanding how the internal auditors basically carry out their day-to-day audit activities. Those who are in the field, for them it's more logical and it's more enriching because they can use this knowledge and apply in their practical application. Our today's unit is about 20% of the entire syllabus, which is one of the highest percentage, and about 20 MCQs approximately come from this area. Overall, it was easy except for the Unit 7 according to me, because for me to prepare notes or to prepare lecture, I found it a bit more challenging when I was preparing for Unit 7, which is sampling and statistical quality control. If you have a statistic background, then it's easy, but again, having a statistic background would not serve the purpose, because you need to know that how this sampling methodologies you can apply in your practical audit, in terms of practical audit activities or audit engagements. So that is where you have to be a little bit more vigilant. This is a graphical or mind map for the entire unit. Basically, the entire unit covers 7 sections, and it is all about how you communicate and disseminate the final results to your stakeholder. So you need to have certain soft skills in terms of how to to communicate verbally, and then hard skill, how you approach the writing in your audit reports, then to whom you are supposed to send the audit reports, what are the protocols that you have to be very much mindful about, how you can conclude the audit engagement in terms of carrying out an exit interview and taking a management response, and once you've done this all, how you are monitoring the progress of your audit findings, whether they have implemented or not. So this is all in summary, which we will be discussing in this unit 9. So let's start with our first section, which is communicating with clients. These are just a few protocols that you need to be mindful about, or you need to have those kind of skill set or characteristic in your mind while communicating with the client. First of all, internal auditor has to be very much skilled in oral and written communication. I found this is one of the biggest deficiency that internal auditor have. They come up with the upper hand and with a level of authority over the clients, which generally brings more resentment towards the auditors within the company. So that we have to be very much mindful about, that we have to use or sharpen our soft skills, and be it oral, be it written, in order for us to serve the client in a very well manner, because at the end of the day, our main objective is to bridge the gap and to let the organization be more resilient. So be it through hard means or soft means, it doesn't matter. But if we approach a neutral approach where we let the client being more comfortable with sharing their weaknesses and guiding them how they can overcome, at the same time we also need to present a true and fair view to the management. I found at times that the auditor, when they do not come across any significant finding, they take a few smaller findings and they make a big blow out of it and show as if the company is in a big danger zone, which is not the case. Just in order, and these auditors sometimes they feel insecure that if they do not come across any finding, then the board or the audit committee might be thinking that they are not doing their job correctly, but this is not the case. The purpose of communication is to inform to the management that what are the weaknesses, what are the gaps they have, and also to the board as well, that these were the gaps which the management is working in order to bridge. Persuasion is one of the most important skills, because if we keep on having a disagreement with the management, then nothing will move. And every time the board will get more irritated, the audit committee will be more irritated if we keep on escalating the issues all the time in every audit engagement to the board. It might be possible that if you are a new auditor, it takes some time to build the rapport, but as you grow with the company and spend more time with the company, you need to have a very strong and good relationship where they feel that you are independent and neutral, and you are not biased, and in that way they will be happy to more collaborate with you and to get results. So the get results means that when we identify issues, the management resolve those issues and the gaps and the control weaknesses are being bridged. So that is what is important for as an auditor for us and for the company as a whole. So there are three main objectives of communication. It is to inform, to persuade, and to get the results. We need to even bring up if there is a major issue we identify in our audit engagement, which during the engagement the management already resolved, but we still need to we need to give the credit to the management, but we need to put it in writing in order for the board and for the audit committee, and for the sake of being documenting those situations in the formal report, in order to let everyone know that these were the issues and which has been bridged and which has been filled. Because I have come across or there were auditors who reached out to me, and they said that there were some significant issues they identified, but the management instantaneously they bridged those issues. So I'm not feeling comfortable in accounting for or putting those findings in the audit report, because management also realized at times that these are such a big issues or significant issues that if it come across to the board, it will have a big impact on them, or there might be some they might be asked for some consequences. So in order to avoid that, they quickly try to manage. In that case, we have to appreciate the management that if they were not aware, and they carry out quick action in order to fill the gap, and the issue has been resolved. In terms of preliminary communication, it is when we are about to start our audit engagement, what are the things that we need to be very much mindful about. So before we carry out any audit engagement, we have to gather the information, whatever information. Sometimes information we have accessible within our permanent file, we call it, but these days it's like somewhere in the server where we auditors keep the policies and procedures and some other stuffs during other engagements which we come across of any specific area, just to review if in case we are about to carry out an audit of that particular area. So we have to review all the information that we already have, or if we can reach out to the management for some preliminary information. Now, once we have the information, then we try to book a time from the management for a kickoff meeting, we call it, and in that we chart out the scope of the audit engagement, the resources we need from the client, the timing when we will start, an expected date of completion, what are the resources we need from the clients, and what are the resources we are deploying from our side, maybe one auditor, two auditors, or three auditors. And if they have any question, that question answer Q&A we carry out at the end of those meetings. Since it's a audit meeting, kickoff meeting before the engagement, so the auditors needs to lead the entire meeting, and in that meeting also we try to answer if the client have any issues or any reservations, just to build a good rapport. So with that we carry out, and then sometime what happened that when we are doing a preliminary review of the information, and we have an intended area of audit review, or maybe a specific area of audit review, we come across that nothing seems to be based on the very preliminary assessment and testing and some high level surveys, we come across that there isn't much of a deficiency in that area, or maybe the area is too narrow, which wouldn't serve much benefit overall within the organization in terms of deploying our limited resources, internal audit resources. In that case, we do not have to feel the guilt to embark on that engagement in any ways when we have more promising area to review. So we can just tell to the client, to the management, that this is based on our initial assessment, we do not come across any major deficiency, and therefore we are canceling our audit engagement. And that needs to be all documented, so we can share with the audit committee or the board that this is the reason why we wanted to pursue for any other audit engagement area, because in the initial review we do not feel that there is much value addition in doing the review of that particular area. Obviously, whenever we are taking such kind of a decision, we have to take an approval from the audit committee or the board. That chief audit executives can take it by reaching out quickly to them, not just wait wait for the audit committee. If it is in closed dates, then they can wait. Otherwise, he can quickly reach out to the chair of the audit committee and try to explain to him, and even if possible, get a email approval before taking such kind of major decision. Sometime what happened that we decided to carry out an audit engagement. In the scope of the audit engagement, in the start we do not realize that it seems to be a small, but when we start the audit, it apparently we realize that it's a big sea. It's not a lake where you have to dig on so many matters, or maybe things start getting complicated, or maybe there are significant issues that start popping up. In that context, you have to increase your sampling size, or maybe you discover a significant fraud in that area. So you cannot wait till the end of the audit engagement to raise those issues. In such situations where the chief audit executive or head of the internal audit, they take their own call to issue an interim report. It could be formal, it could be informal, and highlight those issues to the management and to the audit committee, because our main objective is to stop the leakage or to take in prompt action so that there is not much of a damage to the company. So generally we have, if there is anything immediate require an immediate action, then we go for an interim report. Or if there is a change in the scope of the engagement where we believe that the audit scope needs to be expanded or reduced for any reason, so then we can go for an interim report. The progress of a long duration engagement, so obviously if engagement is too long, then we have to come across short intervals where we keep on updating to the audit committee or the management, or maybe at least in the middle of the engagement, that what is going on and what are the issues that has been discovered during the audit engagement. So after discussing some of the protocols while communicating results with the management, here we are with the second section, observation and conclusion. So what happened that when you carry out an audit engagement, eventually after reviewing all the documents, interviewing the person, observing the situation, inquiring, carrying out surveys, doing analytical procedures, you come across a conclusion where you conclude the entire audit engagement with all the key audit findings. Always remember that audit findings and observations are interchangeably used. The differentiation is, finding is when we review a document, then we come across any indeficiencies, or when we see the design of the control and there are deficiencies, those are findings. Observations are when we observe things around ourselves. For example, we observe that the employees are not wearing proper safety gears in a hazardous situations, or where we observe that the assets are not protected properly, or where the inventory is messy, where we observe that the controls are not working or people are bypassing. So that is more of an observation. So but generally, even in the day-to-day audit activities, you will find auditors use findings / observation. They do not much concern about whether should we use the word observation or finding, and sometimes they just use finding for everything, and sometimes they use observation for everything. So the same case in CIA exam as well. If you come across a word observation or finding, is the same, so do not confuse in that aspect. So after doing the entire fieldwork, we highlight certain audit issues. Audit issues are basically the control deficiencies or the areas where we believe that the management can further improve or can save further to the company in terms of cost savings, or optimizing certain machineries or all. So we come across all those suggestions, recommendation, or audit findings, and we list down all the findings based on severity in terms of whether it's a high risk, medium risk, or low risk, and we also form overall conclusion about the auditable area, that whether the entire area is having a good controls or not. So in all that aspect, if we come across a favorable observation, means that we found positive points where the management has very good controls, then it's great. Then we are encouraged to highlight those positive points as well. But we need to keep it short, because let's say if we come across an area where there were some positive points and we keep on explaining those positive points, it wouldn't serve the purpose, because it is a good control environment. So what management is supposed to do, they only need to know that this area was good, but at the same time they will be more concerned about that if there are weaknesses and how those weaknesses are being overcome. So if there are unfavorable observation, then we need to highlight those with explanation to the management and how they can fulfill. Observation needs, whenever we write an observation within our audit report or our audit finding, we ensure that there are 4 critical elements in the observation. That the criteria, what was the standard practice that needs to be done, what is the condition, what is the current situation that is happening, cause, so why this thing happened, what is the root cause of this situation being not as intended, not as per the criteria, and the last one is the effects. What is the consequences of not doing that? So for example, if the HR people hire an incompetent person, so we would say that, what about the criteria? What is the policies of the company? Does the company have explicit enough good policies and potential job position, job descriptions where the key skills and the qualification is being highlighted or not? So that is a criteria. And the condition is an incompetent person is being hired for that particular position. So this is the current situation. And the cause, we will see what is the cause. Maybe that the person is acquaintance to the HR manager, or maybe he's some of his relative or a friend, or maybe that the policies or the criteria are not so much defined within the company that he wasn't aware that what sort of a person needs to be hired, or the hiring or while shortlisting the candidate. So that root cause needs to be identified in order to bridge that gap and that it doesn't happen in the future. And lastly, the effect is that low productivity or bad productivity, or maybe the person leads some major mistakes or carry out some mistakes or errors, or there was or as a result of his work maybe there was some damages or fine, or maybe the person we needs to terminate, and then again we have to incur the entire hiring cost. So these are effects. And subsequent to that, we discuss with the management, and we, based on our own experience as well, we give the recommendation that whichever area is weak, that needs to be improved. If there are not enough good policies and procedures, that needs to be drafted. If there wasn't a JD, that needs to be done. If there was a biasness in towards recruiting, then we have to involve more independent people in the recruitment process. So that's our recommendation. And once that is given. Later on at the monitoring stage, we ensure that these corrective action has been taken by just taking a few sample of a new hire subsequent, maybe after 6 months or 8 months or 1 year, and see whether those individuals are being recruited based on the proper criteria or the standards which needs to be followed. So this is how we ensure that our audit findings and action is being taken care of. The IPBF standards states that the internal auditor must communicate the results of the audit engagements, and there are certain guidance provided that we need to take into account whenever we are reporting our audit final audit report. First of all, that the objective of the engagement, the scope of the engagement, and the results of the engagement, that needs to be there in the final audit report. We can also provide the background information. I personally very strictly follow this protocol because whenever you're issuing an audit report, the audit report should be self-explanatory to the extent that if an independent person who has no idea about the area of the business or the overall audit activity, he should be able to understand what was happening, what is the issue, and what are the recommendations, and how the control environment in that area of the business is functioning. Therefore, I always put it a background information. It helps me because the audit committee, basically, who meets only 4 times a year, they might not be aware of critical or technicalities of that area. So it helps me to explain it to them when they read the audit report before me explaining to them, that they should be able to grasp all the key critical information, and they should be that my opinion or my judgment should be aligned with theirs. So any independent person should reach to the same conclusion within the when they read the audit report. So for that purpose, I always ensure that I provide them with the holistic view of overall organization, the strategy and objective, and where that engagement falls, and how much, if there is a cost element to that area of the business, that how much potentially can harm or can be can exposure can bring that area to the business. For example, the budget of a department, for example, in that aspect. So therefore, I always try to give a background information. A final communication contains observation. Obviously, less critical observation can be communicated informally. When it took me very long to realize that some very minute observation doesn't need to be put in the audit report. We can just simply communicate and we can fix, because it will save our time, it will save their time, it will save the board or audit committee time, because these are so minute, and that we know as an auditor based on our observation that what are minute and which are not, that we can we have the leverage to tell them informally and just come up with the relatively major or significant area of improvement related findings in the audit report. Auditors can also form their overall conclusion and opinion in regarding with the conformance with the organizational objectives, that whether this area of the business is helping or hindering towards the achievement of organizational objectives. The overall opinion that the auditor gives is not mandatory. It is at the discretion of the auditor whether they want to make it or not. Disagreements with the client, for example, if you come up with any audit findings and you went to the management for the management comments and the management disagree with the audit finding, they say we do not believe that your finding is correct, despite they fail to provide any supporting documents or giving a reasonable answer. In that case, you have to document all the disagreements and bring both positions, yours and the management, to the audit committee, and reflect that in the audit report as well, so that they can decide what course of action that needs to be taken. Obviously, you will give your recommendation, but then that is your call. All the reports needs to be signed. This is what mentioned in the text. I doesn't believe that, but it's in the text, so you just keep the same concept in your mind, because these days we have digital. We do not print it out and give the copies. We have digital forms, so we just send the audit report through the email, and once you send it through email, through your signature in the email, it means that you are owning as the head of audit and all the responsibility for it. Sometimes you can use a digital signature, but generally email from your side is more than enough. I always just send it from my side. I never sign an audit report physically, not even once in my entire career. So I do not know why they emphasize on signing the report, but generally I believe that if you send it through your email, then it is enough. In 9.4 section, communicating qualities and overall opinion, there are certain more guidelines that has been provided that what we can take into account when we are making a communication to our clients. Performance standard 2420 give those some of the key elements of the good quality communication, that it needs to be accurate, which means that there shouldn't be any error or misstatement in your communication. Objective, that you should not be biased, you need to be impartial when you are trying to bring up any issue. Clear, it has to be very logical, and the communication needs to be simple for other people to understand. Concise means to the point, that there shouldn't be too much detail or too less of a detail where people cannot understand the issue or they get distracted. And therefore, it needs to be well balanced, constructive, so that someone can take benefit and can improve something out of your audit findings. If you just put that all the POs are not signed, and it has to be signed. So we all know that all the POs needs to be signed by an authority, but why it has to be? So you can say that there is a lack of apparently the authority limits are being assigned as per certain title or designation, and apparently it is difficult to ascertain whether that the approval has been obtained before issuing the audit, before issuing the purchase order, when in the absence of a signed document. In order to document the approval, we need to obtain the signature. So you can use a good structure of sentence, but this is just for your understanding. So in that way, people will understand what are the deficiencies and why they need to fill those deficiencies. So it has to give a clear, constructive and to-do way of ensuring that how they can fill the gap. So sometimes you reach out to the management with the issue, they tell you, okay, we can fill this issue with this way, and then you ensure that the controls are being taken care of and all the issues are being resolved. Complete, all the information needs to be there, and timely. Timing is so much important, because sometimes highlighting the issue post-event would result in the damages already happened to the company, or the fine is already made to the company. So in that way, timing is very much important. Some other characteristic of effective communication are there are 7 C's in good writings, which means that correct, again, it's overlapping with the above characteristic. Correct and accurate is the same thing. Clear, again, is we already discussed. Concise, constructive, and complete. However, there are 2 more. Consistent means whenever you're writing, your writing style should be consistent, where the reader does not confuse that how you communicate your point of view. Generally, when you have a big team, it had happened that everyone has their own writing style, and you do not want that there are mix of writing style within the audit report. So you follow a certain protocols where there is a consistency in terms of how you present the information, audit findings in your point of view within the audit report, and that needs to be ensured by the engagement lead or the head of audit. And coherent means that all the information which you are providing, it has to have a logical sequence, be it one finding, be it overall engagement or related findings. So a person can follow a sequence rather than just throwing away some haphazard information. Whenever I was in Ernst & Young and we were drafting policies and procedures and drafting reports, the initial training which has been provided to me and the mentorship being provided to me by my seniors and the partner, they always used to encourage us to use active voice, because the active voice is more direct and the sentences are small and a person knows who is supposed to do what, rather than passive voice. It is not that we cannot use passive voice, but it is just highly encouraged to use active voice. Let's say that the accountant does not sign the invoice. If we use passive voice, that the invoice is not being signed by the accountant, that become more of a royal language, but we do not want to use. We need to use a language which is more direct and action oriented and concise, and less use of technical jargons as much as possible. I remember in my first audit report, I opened up a dictionary. I used all the difficult terms and difficult English words, tried to find a synonym, difficult one, and put a lot of information in my audit report. And when my senior review said, Arif, no, we need to cut down on all the technical jargons, we need to shorten the sentence, and we need to provide specific information rather than too much of information. So that was my first learning, where they teach me how to write an audit report. Again, to emphasize or to make more strong retention to the employees, we can use graphics, bullet points, and audio-visual aids. And lastly, the use of the words should be very careful, whether we are using a word fraud or irregularity that needs to be justified in the context which we are presenting to the audit management, or to the management, the business management. Some more relatively guidelines in regards to the communication, and especially which are mentioned in the performance standard 2421 and 2430 and 2421 in non-conformance. So basically, what are these guidelines which are being, not guidelines, these are the element of the standards that we need to comply with. The first one is about error and omission. If we come across, or we came to know that we omitted something, or there were an error in our final communication, then that needs to be in writing, has to be disclosed by the head of the audit to all the stakeholders to whom the communication is made priorly. Conformance is about that we have to conform with the IPPF and standards and the ethics of the Institute of Internal Auditor, and that we have to officially state that, not in the engagement, generally at the year end, whether we are conforming with the IPPF or not. If in case we are not in conformance, either be it at engagement level or at a certain overall audit activity level, then we need to highlight that why we did not comply with, what are the rules or principles that we are not in compliance with, and what is the impact, whether be it at engagement level or overall audit activity level. That needs to be disclosed to the relevant stakeholder, and specifically to the audit committee or to the board by the internal auditor, just to tell them why that non-conformity is happening. So these are certain guidelines that need to be taken into account by the internal auditors. Again, there are certain more elements of quality communication under the Performance Standard 2450. First of all, we need to use active voice over passive voice wherever it's possible. Internal auditor might be asked for an opinion. It happens multiple times that the auditors are being asked by the audit committee or the board or sometimes the management that how your overall opinion is about at a macro level, that at multiple engagement where you form your opinion based on multiple engagement or a year of audit experience, or sometimes they might ask you for a micro opinion, which means that on a particular area of the business or a particular audit engagement. What we are supposed to do at the head of audit is we need to understand the stakeholder requirements, because these opinions can be very critical at times, because based on your opinion they form the decisions or judgment about certain aspect of the business or the management activities or the control environment of the organization. Therefore, we have to be very much careful in understanding that what are the requirement, what is the scope, what area they are asking for, on what basis they are asking for, what is the reason why they come up with this kind of a query. Because when you give an opinion, you are taking the burden of a responsibility on your shoulder that morally you should be giving an opinion by which it is helpful to them. At the same time, you do not put yourself in a big trouble. The macro level opinion generally needs to be in writing, because you are giving an overall opinion about the certain area of the business, certain division of the business, or based on your 1 year of audit plan, and it generally constitutes toward the positive assurance. Positive assurance is, you need to understand there is two terms, positive assurance and negative assurance. So positive assurance, where you specifically tell that the controls are effective in that area of the business, or they are not effective in that area of the business. So where you are clear-cut telling that what is right and what is wrong. However, in negative assurance, when you have not carried out an extensive level of review, or your scope was limited for any reasons, or your resources were limited, or where you have taken a smaller sample, you do not want to give a positive assurance that everything is okay or everything is not okay. You give a negative assurance where you say nothing has come to your attention during the review which can constitute that there is an element of a fraud or irregularity or major control weaknesses within the organization. So this differentiation is very much important. Under the macro opinion, you might come across a qualified opinion. So there is an unqualified opinion where you say everything is okay, and then there is a qualified opinion where you say this area is okay with exception to that particular section of the business, right? So qualified means that you are qualifying your opinion and you are emphasizing on certain area where needs to be put more attention toward. However, apart from that area, the rest of the area is okay. Or you say altogether that area is not okay in terms of control environment. Negative assurance, I have already given you that what is the difference between positive and negative assurance. In terms of exit conference and management response, the exit conference is basically when you have completed your audit engagement, you come across a list of audit findings, you set up a meeting with the management and the key stakeholders and show them all the audit findings, just in order to ensure that if maybe our understanding is wrong, or maybe they have failed to provide certain kind of additional document or supporting or clarity to the auditor where we have to change certain audit findings, or we just agree on that these are the audit issues and we have to resolve those issues, and the management tell them that how they will resolve. So this is why exit interviews are very much important. If we come across in the exit interview or exit conference, we use exit meeting, the term. So in the exit meeting term or conference, if you come across that there were certain errors in your audit report, or certain information was miscalculated, or there could be a possibility and the management highlighted with proper justification supporting, then we need to correct that and put it in writing and share with the relevant stakeholder if we believe that the final communication has been made. However, at the draft level, you just correct it and you just present the correct information. Management, we have to issue the draft report before the final report to the management, so we can take their input, we can take their consent. They can provide us when they will resolve the issues, who will be responsible, how they will resolve the issues. So for that reasons, we need to send the report to the management. However, there might be a possibility on certain findings, there's some disagreement. In that case, they can put forward their views in the report, and so we can present their views and our views to the audit committee for making the final decision. Client satisfaction survey is basically a concept where after each audit engagement, we reach out to the management to obtain their views on the work of internal auditor, whether the scope, width, or the depth was okay or not, whether the understanding of the auditor was good enough to carry out the audit engagement or not, the auditors were skilled or not, the auditors were fair and independent or not, were we a professional or not, what about our audit findings, whether it was more practical and constructive in order for the management to further improve. So this also help us in improving ourselves and taking the input from the management at the same time that how we perform in our audit engagement. While communicating the final results, we have to be mindful about certain elements. This Performance Standard 2440 says the Chief Auditing Executive, first of all, must communicate the results of the to the appropriate parties. Who are the appropriate parties? So basically, that the auditor needs to use their judgment. The board is generally, or the audit committee is generally the key stakeholder. Management, again, the CEO, because he is responsible for the entire operation of the company. Then the divisional head, who is the head of an area, for example, maybe head of finance, CFO, and then the responsible managers who are supposed to resolve those issues, or to whom we need to take the management responses from. So these all people needs to be addressed in the list of communicating the audit finding. At times when we are auditing, we come across that there are multiple departments that are involved. So in that case, what my approach was, I used to send only in the audit findings, the chunk of the audit findings that is more relevant to them, rather than sending the entire report if it doesn't belongs to them. For example, I'm doing a finance audit, but there is certain element of an inventory, or maybe one finding related to inventory where stock take has certain issues, or inventory management is not properly controlled. So I will just only send that section to that one particular process owner, and the rest of the report to the all stakeholders, just for them to keep that level of confidentiality. Whenever there is another standards element which says that the chief audit executive must communicate the results. Okay, this is the same above one. I just wrongly copy paste again. Going to the second point, yes, if the management exposed if we as an internal auditor believe that the management has unnecessarily exposing the business to an unacceptable risk, or the risk which is over and above the risk appetite of the organization, in that case we have to discuss with the management. If they doesn't agree, then we have to put forward our opinion, and with all the details and supportings and the impact which we believe to the audit committee or to the board, for them to understand, and if there is a need for taking an action, or if the management or if the board decided to accept that risk, then the onus should be on them. So, but our job is to present true and fair view, true and fair perspective to the issue. If there are times when we need to inform on certain issues to the regulators, or there might be a whistleblower activity that we have to address. So in that case, when we have to communicate outside the organization, the first thing we have to do is to use what is the communication protocols within the company. We have to follow that. We have to take a legal opinion on what information and how we can protect ourselves, and what format of the information that we need to communicate to the external stakeholder, because we might be very innocent in just sharing the information, but as a result we might put ourselves in a big trouble, because we might be breaching the IIA code of confidentiality, or we might also be exposing the company to a major risk based on our limited information. So in that aspect, we have to be very careful whenever we are sharing any information to any external authorities, or maybe it regulator or government authorities, or to anyone. We have to take all the precautionary measures that we can take, and take an approval from the audit committee or to the board before presenting that information to those external parties. At the end of the audit engagement, when everything is done and dusted, then we still cannot shed off our responsibility. We still need to do certain kind of monitoring, just to ensure that the corrective actions which has been taken is being followed by the management. What are the actions that we as an internal auditor has to take? First of all, we have to build a system to monitor as per the standard performance standard 2500, and the disposition of the results should be communicated to the management, which means that whenever the system we build to monitor the ongoing progress of the control environment within the company, that's the results of those, or time to time check of those activities needs to be communicated to the management and to the board. What is the system? There should be certain elements that the list of the observation, the corrective action that management has been taken to resolve those issues, and what is the current status. That's we need to monitor. And this process in itself we generally call in our audit language like follow-up process, which means that once we issue the audit findings, we take all the findings, especially the one which are open findings and of a medium risk or high risk. Generally, in some companies they even follow up on the low risk as well, but depending on the resources you have. But mainly the medium risk and the high risk audit findings, and we see that whether the management has taken the action to resolve those issues or not. And once they say that they have taken the action and you verify, then you wait for some time just to collect certain sample data and from the total population, and see and do a follow-up check just to ensure that the controls are being used consistently. What happened that when this activity is missing within the audit work, that the management, they fall back to the old process because it's more convenient, it's more fast, they do not want to get into more formalities. So sometimes they just to ensure, or just to let the auditors know that they have done the corrective action, they will do it for a while and then they will stop it. And once you go back after a while to audit the same way, you will come across the same audit findings. So it is important that we have a follow-up process where we even review after some time that area, that specific audit finding, with certain kind of sampling, like from the population we take certain samples, and just to ensure that they are consistently using. If they aren't, then we have to notify them, and we have to also communicate that the results of these follow-ups. I used to present in every audit committee the results, so to the management and to the audit committee, to let them know that what is the current status of the ongoing activities of monitoring the audit findings issues. If the management has taken or accepted certain risk, that needs to be documented, and again that needs to be presented to the audit committee. If the risk is beyond risk appetite, then the audit committee needs to take certain kind of an action and to let the board know that what is the risk that the management is exposing the business towards. So finally, here we are at the end of the this entire unit and presentation, and I'm so much happy that alhamdulillah I was able to finish this entire video series of CIA part 2, and I hope that you benefit from. In the background you might be hearing barking of our dogs. These dogs belongs to my brother. We have 2, so please ignore that, but I'm very much excited that I was able to record all these videos. There is a lot of work which happens in the background. It's a very time consuming thing, reading the entire unit, summarizing those units into simple notes, putting all the key elements in the presentation, formatting the presentation, then setting up the entire area. Though you don't realize, but I have lightings and mic and all this stuff, and then the editing goes on, and then it is put it forward on live on YouTube. So there is a lot of work that goes, and that's why I always ask you to pray for me that I also complete the part 3rd. So for the students, for any aspirant of CIA, that they can benefit from it. And if you benefit from, please like, subscribe, and share your experiences in the comments column, and take care of yourself and your loved ones, and thank for all the prayers, because I was not feeling well, and I put in a post, but I've almost recovered. I'm still on medication, but I'm almost recovered. So thank you for all those prayers, and keep praying that I continue and putting forward something valuable to all the people who are benefiting from it, rather than just putting something for the sake of views and likes. Thank you. Take care.